you come to Dharma talks and if you read about Buddhism, you're going to come across a lot of ostensibly oxymorons or contradictions. A lot of how we express the Dharma comes in the form of you are perfect just as you are, and you could use a little work. Or we say, reality is non-dual. But then we also say, it's dual. And we say, it's not two and it's not one. And sometimes teachers will say, it's both this and that, and not this nor that. We have a sutra called the Identity of Relative and Absolute. That's like a core teaching of Zen Buddhism. And the absolute perspective says that everything is this empty oneness of just thus. And the relative says there is a great diversity in our world. There's koans about leaving or avoiding karma and the law of cause and effect. That's what the Buddha, that's his original teaching. There is a way to resolve your karma and be free of conditions. And at the same time, there's tons of writings about how no one escapes the law of cause and effect. That is the Buddha way, to really lean into and honor cause and effect. So, I do believe that all of these contradictions and oxymorons really are simply the most genuine way that people have found to express what it is to awaken to the truth of the universe, to our true essential self. And I'm talking about it in this way today in particular because, as I said, I do have kind of a habit of talking about this at this time of year because we're approaching Christmas. And I really, really find a lot of clarity in using Santa Claus as the perfect manifestation of the enlightened view and how to understand all of these contradictions and oxymorons that show up in the teachings. Because if you think about it, Santa Claus is the perfect manifestation of both existing and not existing, right? There is no Santa Claus. There is not a white man with a factory of elves who flies on a sled in one night across the whole world. It does not exist. That is a delusion. And at the same time, Santa Claus very much exists. We could all draw him right now. We could all talk about him. We can point to him. We can say what he does. We know his wife's name. We know what he wears. It very much exists. And, you know, you could say that is the case for any of our holiday legends, like, you know, or the Tooth Fairy or the Easter Bunny or a tasty vegetable. But the reason I think Santa Claus is so such a perfect metaphor is because what does Santa Claus do with his seeming existence? He gives. He gives. He gives. The tooth fairy kind of follows the same principle, but the tooth fairy is very transactional. They don't give you anything unless you have a tooth for them. And at the same time, while Santa Claus is the ultimate giver, he also honors boundaries, and he honors this law of cause and effect. Um, I think keeping a list of good people and bad people maybe is not the most compassionate way to do it, but to really hold firm to what it is to be good, to do good and do good for others. Those are two of the three pure precepts. So I just think Santa Claus is the perfect manifestation of the Bodhisattva, his vow, his raison d'etre, if I may, is to give, is to support and bring joy, and also really be clear about what is not okay. And you don't get rewarded for bad behavior. But it's not so much punitive as much as it is encouraging. Well, you weren't really good this year, but like, be good next year and your stocking will be full. It's always a chance for rebirth and for resolving our karma, like Shoyu said. So, yeah, and this is all very conceptual and very heady and very explanatory, and they're just words. So don't take them too seriously. But just as you come across all of these contradictions in the Buddhist teachings, um, just invite that spirit of Santa Claus. And it really is the perfect expression of ourselves. The idea that you exist as a thing, as a person, separate from other people, is as delusive as thinking there's a Santa Claus. That you exist, that the world exists as a thing, is as ridiculous as saying Santa Claus exists. And at the same time, you exist exactly as Santa Claus is a thing. We can point to it, we can talk about it, we can fix it, we can feed it cookies. So I'm always trying to find ways to legitimize this metaphor with some traditional teachings. And so there's this one koan in the Shoyo Roku, which we know as the Book of Equanimity. Book of Equanimity. This is the third collection of koans that we study in our curriculum here, for those of you who are doing koans with a teacher. So this case involves Isan and Kyozan, who are two pretty prominent teachers that show up in the koan curriculum. I did some brief research, I couldn't find exactly when they were, but I'm pretty sure Isan was around the 8th century. So again, we always say it, but if you think about it, 1,300 years ago, folks were just exploring the same stuff that we're exploring today. What am I? What is this? Why am I here? Why is there suffering? How do I understand this life? So, in this story, Isan asked Kyozan, and I'm pretty sure Isan was Kyozan's teacher. So the teacher is kind of testing or grilling the student, and he asks, how would you examine someone who happens to ask you, All sentient beings have unceasing karmic consciousness, but there is no basis on which to depend. Kyozan replied, if such a monk were to come, I would call him by name, saying, hey, so-and-so. If the monk turned his head, I would say, what is that? I'd wait for him to hesitate and then say to him, not only is karmic consciousness unceasing, there's also no basis on which to depend. Isan remarked, good. So this is an interesting interaction. We don't really see it that much in the koans, where it kind of seems like Isan is testing to see how Kyozan would respond if another student came to him. So maybe Kyozan is starting to teach, and Isan is, making sure that Kyozan is teaching well. In more modern Zen Buddhism, we've created this position of Dharma holder, which kind of comes before you get transmission, and you're kind of seen as a teacher in the community, but you're like a supervised teacher. So students are encouraged to like report on how it's going with the Dharma holder and stuff like that. So maybe it's something like that. Kyozan is a kind of Dharma holder. He's starting to see students, be a senior in the community, and so Isan is like seeing like, okay, what would you say in this situation? I don't know if that's the case, and it doesn't really matter, because we're all teachers, and we're all coming up against students and curious people, and maybe you tell people you've been meditating and they say, oh yeah, I've been reading about Buddhism and I learned about karmic consciousness and how there's nothing to depend on and blah, blah, blah. Or not. Maybe you're at the bus stop and someone says, how's your holiday season? These are all spiritual questions. And so this practice of how would you respond to that? Kind of a good one. We don't necessarily want to be like calculating or preparing answers, because that's not very genuine. But to always check in with, how am I expressing the Dharma? How are you expressing the Dharma? That's a great thing to talk about with your Dharma brothers and sisters. Hey, this person came up to me and asked me about whatever, codependent origination. What would you say about that? It's like the biggest sin against the Buddha to talk about Buddhism. And yet we have to do it. We have to communicate ourselves, our understanding. That's how we connect, and that's how we share the Dharma. So, yeah, I don't know of any other koan where they do this. What would you say if, it's such an interesting prompt. So yeah, Kyozan, what would you say if a monk comes to you and says, all sentient beings have unceasing karmic consciousness? So this karmic consciousness, being aware of the differences of the world, cause and effect, that's karmic consciousness. Everything we do affects everything. I really believe that. This experience of oneness of all things, the complete dropping off of body and mind, time and space. You really get to see that it's true. The wolf in the Mongolian steppe 1800 years ago, 4,000 years ago, has a direct effect on what I'm saying to you right now. What my hair looks like, what the birds are saying right now. everything completely intertwined as one. And that is unceasing, it's beginningless and endless. It goes beyond our concept of time. So yeah, we exist in this realm of unceasing cause and effect, causes and consequences. And yet, there is no basis on which to depend. So that's the other side. That's the absolute, the emptiness side, the side of not knowing. Not knowing could be seen as the primary teaching of the Buddha. Totally letting go of the shoulds, letting go of the expectations. There's this cause and effect karmic consciousness, but it makes no sense. All the bad people win, and all the good people lose. And I work really, really hard and do better than the other person, but they get the promotion. And I treat someone really, really badly, but I'm lauded as the popular nice person. And we just spend our whole lives trying to hold on to certainty, to think that things should make sense. And if I do this, then that should happen. But what a nice expression. There is nothing upon which to depend. All the ideas I have about myself, all the ideas I have about goodness, anything. Can we hold on to those loosely and really see that there's nothing permanent? You know, the teaching of impermanence is, so famous and really easy to mention and talk about, but can we really take impermanence to its fullest extent? Everything is impermanent. So that's like the perfect description of Santa Claus, right? There is this unceasing karmic consciousness. There is this existence. There is you and me. There is Santa Claus. And there is no basis on which to depend. There is no Santa Claus. There is no you. There is no life. There is no death. And, to say that, to carry it with us as a philosophy or a concept to hold on to, I don't know what value that necessarily has, other than to inspire us to practice, to sit down and little by little chip away at all of our thoughts and concepts until we are face to face with this fact of nothing to depend on. To really see, to experience, to dissolve into the fact of no life and no death. To just have that as a philosophy, yeah, I don't know. It's very easily disprovable. I'm alive. People lose people close to them. Life and death. So can we really vow to have that experience of no life, no death, no Santa Claus, no basis on which to depend? So then Kyozan replies, if someone came to me and said that, I would call him by name, saying, hey, so-and-so. So that's the real meat and juice of this koan. Hey, so-and-so. And then when they turn their head, what is it? What is that? That experience of being here, being present. There's another koan where a monk asks, what is it that's transmitted? What is the Buddha's mind that is passed down? And the teacher just simply says, Ananda. And Ananda goes, yes. He says, you've got everything you need. It's just this in this moment. So when I call your name, what is that? Is that a thing? Is that not a thing? You're obviously not your name. That's just a name that someone gave you. It's just a word. So what are you? What are you really? And if you work with a teacher, really working with these koans, you should be able to show exactly who you are. Letting go of existence and non-existence. Completely being free of concepts and dualism. This and that and not this and not that. Totally free to just be who you are in this moment. Just be the presence under the tree. So that's the magic. That's the magic teaching in this koan. Hey, Tim, what is that? And then Kyozan says, after I say that, I'd wait for him to hesitate. Which is a little presumptive. Maybe the monk would have a really swift response. But we don't. We don't. I think that's a beautiful expression. We hesitate. That's the nature of this karmic life. And if we don't hesitate, it reminds me of something Seisin told me as I was starting to take on students and work on koans with people. I would sometimes come to her and say, man, I was working on this koan with so-and-so, and gosh, I really am, I'm not that clear on this one. And she said, if you ever feel like you are clear about a koan, that is a red flag. And it's so right. Because of not knowing, because of impermanence, if we think we have the answer to anything, we find ourselves in trouble. And we do know 2 plus 2 is 4. And if you work on the koan mu, there is an answer that everyone has to give. But it's also really fresh in every moment. And there's a difference. There's a difference. If I enter into a situation knowing that 2 plus 2 equals 4 and that's it, and I'm closed, and that's just the answer, it's going to be very different than if I come to 2 plus 2. Pretty sure that's 4, but let me just, yeah, it's 4. There's a difference there. There's a softness. There's an openness. Um, so yeah, that's a difficult invitation to accept. Um, so yeah, he'll hesitate because we all hesitate. And when he hesitates, I'll say to him, not only is karmic consciousness unceasing, not only is there a Santa Claus that we have to abide by. If someone says, who's that guy with the red suit and the white beard? You're not going to say, I don't know. It's Santa Claus. Not only is karmic consciousness unceasing, there's also no basis on which to depend. So yeah, he's just affirming what the monk says. Although the monk kind of has this spirit of like, this doesn't make any sense. We all have this cause and effect, but also there's no cause and effect. It doesn't make any sense. Maybe he's trying to be like clever. Oh, I gotcha. I remember I used to do that, listening to Dharma talks, try to find where there was like inconsistencies and raise my hand and try to be smart and be like, well, you said this, but you also said that. Um, and really, honestly, the only motive for doing that was to come off as smart, which is so unfortunate. Um, so then he kind of takes that cleverness, um, or, even if it's genuine, I don't understand. How can these two things exist? Kyozan flips it around and says, not only is there karmic consciousness, but there's also no karmic consciousness. Both. Both and. How do you manifest that? And then Isan remarks, good, which is really nice. Good for you, not being trapped in, how do I explain this away? How do I reconcile this contradiction? That's what the ego wants to do. That's what our conceptual mind wants to do. It wants to make sense of all this stuff. It wants to catch the contradictions and say, oh, there's something wrong there. But to really be free, to really drop off self and manifest this selfless self, is to see this oneness of two and one and zero and oneness and diversity, dualism and non-duality. Um, how do we do that? We sit. We sit a lot. We fight with our Sangha members. We have parties and joy with our Sangha members. We try new things. We offer to take service roles and try being Jikido and try being chant leader and try being work leader. Volunteer for projects we don't want to do. Work with a teacher and sit and sit and sit to really invite this personal awareness of no life, no death, and the importance of how we manifest our life together. Ho, 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 y'all. Thank you so much for listening.